So we looked today at some of the basics of working with a loan, and I had you start creating balance sheets. When we look at these balance sheets, we want to make sure that we keep track of all the relevant information and make spreadsheets that we can reuse, because a lot of times we'll be able to recycle these in a way that speeds things up. So what I'm going to do is I'll generally copy the description of what it is we're looking at and put it into a new spreadsheet. And so when I go into the spreadsheet here, I can paste this in, and that way I can just go back and see, okay, what is it that I'm working on. If you want, you can merge a bunch of cells together to sort of see uh, what's happening there, and I can wrap that to be able to reference what the problem is a little more easily. So when we're working with these balance sheets, the basic information that we're going to want is going to be the same in each case. And so I had you, write down the APR, the periods per year, the interest, the present value, a lot of different things there. I'm going to copy that and put that over here. And well, let me do this. And for the sake of compactness, a lot of times I'll put it in vertically. So I'm going to paste that transposed here. So I have a column then that contains all the necessary information, and I can delete this unnecessary row there. And we're going to look at what we input. So we talked about this today. We'll put 3% in for the APR, and generally APR is stated as a percent, but the interest per period is going to be stated as a decimal. So we have 12 periods per year here since it's monthly, the interest per period. Again, anytime I input a number, I want to highlight it in some sort of color. The interest per period is going to equal that 3% divided by 12. We have that as a decimal. It's calculated present value. Here we're depositing $4,000. Payment, we're not making any regular payments, is 0. And the future value here in this case, we're going to calculate that in a couple minutes. So I'll put these in as currency and give them this yellow formatting. The term, the number of years, we're told in this case, just 1 year is what we're looking at, and the number of payments is 12. So total number of payments is going to equal the periods per year times the number of years. And again, anywhere we input a number, we want to highlight that. Anywhere we have a formula, we'll leave that untouched there. And so this gives me sort of a nice setup to start working with here. And I can either build a balance sheet over here to the right of it or down below it. I don't really have a preference on that. So I'm going to, rather than doing months with dates, I'm just going to do period again. As I mentioned today, in each period we have the beginning balance, all of our transactions, which in this case is just interest, and the ending balance. And as some of you have seen already, it can be nice to wrap this. And then our periods are, well, we start off with period 1. The beginning balance, I want to point that over to the present value here. What are we starting at? My interest is going to equal the beginning balance times the interest rate. Now, as we've seen before, we have to be careful because if I copy down, then this C6, when I copy it down a row, is going to then point to C7. And I don't want to multiply the beginning balance times this big number over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually put dollar signs in this formula here. On your computer, you can hit F4. If your computer has the function keys on it, you can use F4 to do that. And so I can use F4 and it cycles through. We'll talk more about those references, but for most of what we'll do dollar sign column, dollar sign row, and that'll permanently lock in that reference to this cell here. And then the ending balance is going to equal the beginning balance plus the interest. So F5 plus G5 there. Our new period is going to equal the previous period plus 1. The new beginning balance is always our ending balance. the interest should be calculated the same way. And we can see there that this did indeed keep it pointed at C6. So we have, I don't know what it was trying to do. I don't want to dictate there. And then the ending balance, we can copy this down. And we see now that it seems like everything's pointing correctly. And when we copy this down, we see that we do indeed get the correct amount. So the difference when we do these formulas that point either with dollar signs or without is this F6 in this case. That's what we call a relative reference. So as I copy it, it changes either the row or the column depending on where I copy it. The C6 is locked in. That's an absolute reference. It will always point over here at this interest rate because that's never going to change. So this will give us this ending value here. And so then to answer the questions, what were the questions that we were looking at? We're asked, how much total interest was paid during the year. So I can go over here and point my ending balance at this number here and change this to, say, a different color to show it's one of my answers. And maybe we'll use green instead, prettier than red. The interest paid, we can calculate as it being the ending balance, the future value, minus the present value. So we get 121.66, and the APY, of course, was equal to the 121.66 over the starting value. So it's the interest paid in a year, and so we get 0.0304, which as a percent is 3.04%. And so your assignment then that we're going to see for tomorrow is to build in the rest of the spreadsheets and a couple other scenarios.